Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today, we're headed to New York City, where a memorable meeting between two distinguished visitors took place at the Astor House during the morning of February 20th, 1861. President elect Abraham Lincoln, on his way to Washington, D.C., to be inaugurated as the nation's chief executive, greeted the venerable nonagenarian Joshua Dewey. He's pictured here, a Connecticut native and Brooklyn resident who voted in every presidential election since the ratification of the Constitution. He had also shouldered a musket during the Revolution. Joshua's Continental Army service, brief and unofficial, came unexpectedly in the immediate aftermath of a raid by Benedict Arnold, the arch traitor who traded his blue coat for British red. One September day in 1781, Arnold led an attack against Forts Trumbull and Griswold along the Thames River at New London, Connecticut. The British left the village in ashes and destroyed Fort Trumbull. Joshua, then in his mid teens and from nearby Lebanon, joined the garrison of Fort Griswold and did his part to keep it in the hands of the Patriots. Joshua was not the only member of his immediate family to fight. His father, Captain Daniel Woodward Dewey, commanded a company in Colonel Samuel Johnson's regiment of the Connecticut Militia, also known as the 4th Essex County Militia. Two of Joshua's older brothers also served both in their father's company. A month after the burning of New London, Connecticut, General George Washington accepted the surrender of Lord Charles Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia, ending the war and Joshua's garrison duty. Joshua shouldered a musket against the British one more time. It was during the War of 1812. This at the Battle of Ogdensburg in 1813, a victory by the enemy. Joshua served as a sergeant in the 14th Regiment New York Militia. By this time, Joshua had graduated from Yale, moved to Cooperstown, New York, where he farmed and taught in a school where a young aspiring author named James Fenimore Cooper learned his ABCs. Joshua served in the Empire State Legislature and accepted an appointment from President John Adams as a collector of internal revenue. Life was good for Joshua, his wife, Laura, and children, which eventually numbered a dozen, 8 of whom lived to maturity. Flash forward to the 1860 election. Now, widowed Joshua divided his time living with the families of one of his sons and a daughter. Good health and a clear mind were his constant companions. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances cherished and revered Joshua as a living connection to those epic events that shaped the nation and seemed so far away and yet so close. As the country he played a role in establishing drifted closer and closer to civil war, he and the last remaining survivors of the revolution were held up as examples of that generation who fought for freedom and secured a constitution honoring personal liberties and a government of, by, and for the people. The chance to have Joshua meet President elect Lincoln was too good to pass up. There's a man who was responsible for making it happen. He was 28-year-old L. Nathan Walker Packard, a recently married lawyer with a practice in Nunda, New York, about 60 miles south of Rochester. He was a regular contributor to a local newspaper, the Nunda News, and many in town thought he'd stay and raise a family, seemed a perfect fit. But then he got a job offer to be part of a commercial and collections agency in New York City. He had to take it, and so he went. At some point after he arrived in the city in 1860, he met Joshua and learned his story. And after Lincoln won the election and news came that the president elect would be traveling by train through New York City, Packard realized that the new commander in chief needed to know about Joshua, and Packard acted. First, he had a large framed photograph prepared. I have no idea if this is that image, but Joshua certainly looks the right age, and the style of the photograph is consistent with this period around 1860. Then Packard wrote a letter dated February 19th, the first day that Lincoln would be in town, and arranged to have the photograph and the letter delivered to Lincoln during his overnight stop. A local historian tells the rest of the story. The following day, a note came saying that Mr. Lincoln received with much pleasure the photograph of Joshua Dewey and extended his most cordial thanks. Quote, Mr. Lincoln will be happy to see you and Mr. Dewey should you favor him with a call, the note concluded. It was signed by another history making name, John H. Hay, secretary, and probably was a cherished memento of E.W. Packard's as long as he lived. End quote. On the morning of the 20th, at the Astor House, Joshua met the soon to be president and Mary Todd Lincoln. A Brooklyn Evening Star correspondent reported, quote, Mr. Dewey was much pleased with them both. The Evening Star also published Packard's letter in full. I want to read it to you. It begins, Honorable Abraham Lincoln, dear sir, allow me here to present you with a photograph of my respected friend, the Honorable Joshua Dewey of Brooklyn, New York, who has reached the ripe age of 94 years. He has voted at every presidential election since that of Washington and takes pride in the fact that he cast his last vote for honest old Abe. He entered the Army of the Revolution as a volunteer at the tender age of 15. He has held many responsible public positions and, in his lifetime, has witnessed the birth, rise, and progress of this great country. Heaven has bounteously lengthened out his life, and he has come down to us from another generation to remind us of the cost and value of our institutions and of our duty in preserving them. Of no man in all the country can this be more truly said. He is the oldest graduate of Yale College and the oldest of the legislators of the state of New York, one of the last of a generation of men who pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in defense of civil and religious liberty, and who wrought out in tears and blood the great government over which you have been called to preside. Full of years and of honors, yet with eye undimmed and intellect unimpaired, with a firm step he now treads our streets and gladdens our firesides, and with undiminished devotion prays for the preservation of our country. He stands like a solitary watchman upon the ramparts of the Union, imploring us to protect and preserve it from the ruthless hands that would tear it asunder, and bids us bring its administration back to the standard of honesty and simplicity which characterized its earlier days. He desires me to assure you of his entire confidence in your ability, integrity, and patriotism, and to express the highest hope that with the assistance of him who has never forsaken this nation, you will be able to accomplish the mission you have before you and restore harmony, peace, and fraternal affection to the various sections of our now distracted country, hoping that the simple memento may not be unacceptable to one who has been called to administer the government of so great, generous, and confiding a people. I am, respectfully, your humble servant, E.W. Packard. We all know how Lincoln went on to lead the Union to victory, but Joshua would not live to see it. 3 years later, On February 24th, 1864, he passed away in Watertown, New York, at his daughter's home. He did bear witness to the struggles in Virginia in 1861 and 1862, the monumental Eastern clashes at Antietam, at Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and Gettysburg, and the Western battles of Fort Donelson, Shiloh, Stones River, Chickamauga, and Chattanooga, and the siege of Vicksburg. It is fair to state that Joshua's final service to his country was connecting three generations: his own of the Revolution, Lincoln's, and young Packard. And speaking of Packard, he did live to see the war end and continued on until a sudden heart attack silenced his voice in 1888 at age 56. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.